Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here. Wednesday the 24th of November 2021. Right, it's been just over a week since the end of the NEC show, and I've just had a bit of a break from the garage and the power set, concentration on a few jobs around the house to get some brownie points. But let's get back onto something because we've got plenty of things we can do, and I think the priority probably is to concentrate back on the Fury SS, because we want to sort out, you know, the few minor shakedown issues, which is gearbox indexing, possibly an oil leak from within the cam tunnel, and then balancing the lifting of the carb slides. So we've got to lift the tank and adjust the cables underneath. But to do all that, instead of, you know, messing around sitting on seats on the floor, let's get it on the bench. So I'm going to do a bit of shuffling around. The Bandit's just on the bench at the moment, not for anything significant, just as a parking place. So let's do a bit of shuffling around here, get the garage door open, create a bit of space, and swap the Bandit and the Fury SS around. Bring you back when it's done with the power of video. And bingo, there we are. That took some shuffling around, but actually no swearing whatsoever was involved. No profanities, nothing. It looks a little bit cramped, but actually, you know, I've got a big space over here. So, yeah, there we go. Right, let's begin with the gearbox outer cover. So, it's just gear lever off, kickstart off, and the rear brake plate off, because on this side the footrest is welded to the rear brake plate, which is correct, it was one piece, but that's just 4 bolts and nuts, and then we'll be able to take that cover off. First though, got to drain the box of gear oil as well. Right, let's get on with that. Okay, that's the kickstart, gear change levers, and rear engine plate complete with footrest off. So that gives us complete access now to the outer gearbox case on this left hand side. So we've got 2 acorn nuts, and the rest then are Phillips, including these under here, all the way around the what is the kickstart spline inside. So we'll whip those off, take the cover off. Oil's already been drained out of it, and we should be in then, and we'll have a look then and try and determine whereabouts the gearbox cam is in relation to the quadrant, and try and work out what I've done wrong. Right, well, not too bad a job really. 20 minutes later for the whole job to get the cover off, and we're in. Right, so here's the Ger Change Quadrant, which pivots on this spindle and engages at the back with teeth onto, you can't see it too well, let me just get something to point. There we go. Just there, at the end of the screwdriver, is the cam disc, which is circular and in a horizontal position, and its spindle is this underneath here. So if we take this rubber off, there's its spindle in there. So its spindle is vertical and the cam wheel itself is horizontal. So what we've got to do is, we can take out the quadrant by removing that split pin, and we can remove its spindle. We can pull this out, and we can make sure first of all that the bike is in first gear before we then try and index it with the quadrant in the right position. I mean, you normally do it in first gear or neutral, but we'll do it in first. And also then what I want to check is that the plungers in the outer case, which are down here, you can't see them very well there with the torch. You can just see the two plungers. There they are, that's a better view of them. There, which are operated by the gear change spindle. Those two pointed plungers there engage properly with the slots in the quadrant there. I've got a feeling that might be an issue as well. Now the other thing that we can do as well is we can try and grab the quadrant and change gear manually with a bit more force, and that might prove then as well, if that works, whether or not our gear change mechanism with the plungers there is slightly out of line, and therefore they're not able to grip that quadrant properly. So let's do a bit of testing now. Right, I think the plot thickens, so whoops, sorry about the light there. So you can see I've taken the timing cover off as well, because I just thought I'd check in there while we're on this side. It's only a matter of removing 5 screws, and that's because we need that off anyway if we're going to have a look at the oil leak in the cam box, because we're going to take the chain off and we need the crank to be in the right position to do that. And anyway, we could actually check the seals and stuff on the timing cover, and that's fine, and it all looks good in there, so that's good. But gearbox, so you're using either a screwdriver or a clamp on the quadrant here. I can select first, neutral and second. It looks to be in the right position, but I can't get it into third. It's absolutely solid trying to get it into third. I've now the Fury on its main stand is always sits on its back wheel, so it's awkward when you want to try and spin the back wheel, but I've got the front tied down with a strap there through the wheel, as you can see, onto the bench, and using the cover off at the back here for wheel changing, etc., is pretty useful, because that means then I can spin the back wheel to move the gearbox a bit. So we could try and agitate it while we're changing gear, but say it works for first, second and neutral, and the quadrant does look to be in the right position, but I can't get it into third. So I think I'm going to need to remove the inner cover. Now there's only a couple of screws. Where are we? One up there and one there. But I know that there's a bearing there, ball bearing there. You can see behind the Kickstart pinion, which is held on by a shoulder, and it's very tight on that main shaft there. So we're going to need to remove the Kickstart pinion, which is easy enough, and then we're going to gently need to have to try and press this case by moving this bearing, which is on the shoulder on the other side of the case. So the bearing's got to come with the case on that shaft, and I know that's tight as hell. But anyway, we've got to do it. So let's get on with it and have a look inside there. There's something not right. You know, it could be selector is misaligned, and the selector might have accidentally, well, somehow popped out of the selector cam. But anyway, let's get that cover off and do it properly and have a look at it. Right, we're in. Got the inner cover off. No problem at all, really. That was pretty good. So, I've done the first inspection of this, and it all looks okay actually, which obviously is good news. There are 3 selector forks like this brass one here that have nibs on the top side that slot into the cam here. Effectively, you know, this box has been turned 90 degrees anti-clockwise from what you'd normally see on a Triumph Twin. So the cam plate sits on the top and its spindle comes through the top of the crankcase and is here. So anyway, all the gears look good. All the 3 selector forks nibs are slotted in the cam plate, but trying to change gear manually by using either selector quadrant or even trying to grab the cam plate. I do have spares of these. Trying to grab the cam plate, then again it first, neutral and second is fine, just will not go into third. So before we take this apart any further, let's use some of my spares, because I can probably mock up, you know, almost a complete pair of clusters on the main shaft and the lay shaft, and see if we can identify what might be going on. I do have a thought, and I'll show you in the next clip. Right, and here we are with them laid out. So first of all, here's the cam plate that sits on the top, and you can see the gears on the top of it that are driven by the selector quadrant. There's its spindle that pokes up through the top of the crankcase, and then underneath you can see that there are the 3 slots for the 3 selector fork nibs to slot into. And that's fine. One thing to also note, which I did check before I put the gearbox together, is that you can see the little nibs on the top of the selectors for the slots on the cam plate. All of these should have, as you can see, there is actually a it's not a bearing, if you like, there's a little hardened bushing that sits on there, which these two haven't got. So but I know that the 3 selectors actually in the gearbox at the moment do have those, because that was one of the things I've got to check, and I do have actually spares of those little bearings, bushes, whatever you want to call them really. So that's okay. Right, so where we've got it, so I do have a spare lay shaft, but I don't have a spare main shaft, so I've just laid these gears out without the shafts. So this is the lay shaft here, this is the main shaft. This goes out to the oh my goodness me, sprocket. Losing my words at the moment. This goes out to the gearbox sprocket, which mounts on here. The lay shaft goes all the way through to the clutch, and on this side the main shaft comes out for the Kickstart pinion, ratchet pinion. Now I've got all the gears except for main shaft third. I don't have another one of those. So I've just laid this out and just started to simulate what might be going on in the box, and I think I might have come across the problem, and it's to do with the lay shaft third gear meshing into, I think that's the 4th gear rather than the 2nd. But anyway, the dogs on the lay shaft main gear not inserting properly into this gear. And the reason why I'm thinking that is because, let me just take these out and I'll show you. There we are. So there are 6 dogs there, and these two are definitely the right gears, because most of the gears have a unique set of teeth, etc., and a profile. There's the other gear that the dogs should mesh into, but they don't, because you can see there are 7 slots in this and only 6 dogs on there. And this has sounded some warning bells, because When I was building up Tony Page's Bandit, which uses the original Umberslade experimental motor that's stamped TX3, that motor was a developed motor without a gearbox, and so we had to obviously put together a gearbox from all the parts that we'd managed to accumulate, or Tony had managed to accumulate. But we only had one third gear between us, so we got a couple made up, and this is one that we had made up. And at the time we also had to probably make some slight modifications over and above what we thought was the correct gear, because we found that there were two versions of this gear, hence the different number of dogs. And I'm just wondering whether I foolishly had this gear made up assuming all the spare gears that I've got for fourth gear is the same as in his Bandit, but it's probably not. So I'm just wondering whether the issue is that we can't get the box to select third gear because we've got the same problem in the box between the two gears, in that the dogs and the recesses won't mesh because they're not a match. So let's just check which gear this is. So we go to the parts book. We're the opposite way around here. So there's our lay shaft third gear, and this is the gear that it won't mesh into. There is a washer in between them as well. I must check that out. So 27, second gear. Okay, I knew it was either second or fourth. So that's lay shaft second gear. Now luckily I had these gears made up at a fairly local company in Leicester, M&B Precision Engineers, who make up custom gears either to patterns or to drawings, and I do have drawings for these. So it looks like we might be looking at a trip to them, but they're good guys anyway, so we can fix this, but it might be take a bit more than we originally thought. So let me just show you again what I think we can do to check this out. So I think what we can do, let me just stabilise the light so I can just show you. Right. Stabilise the camera a bit. Now, the lay shaft just slots in a leader roller bearing at, obviously on the other side of the gearbox. But I'm just wondering whether I might be able to get that lay shaft out on its own, because what you can do with this is that the cam plate is held in by a obviously a slotted, not slotted, a hollow nut here. But if you do this nut, undo this nut, which rises up, you can raise the cam plate so that you can disengage the selector fork nibs from it. And in that way then we might start to generate, you know, enough movement in this lay shaft to maybe slightly take it apart and see if that is the issue. I mean, there's certain things that we can do. So for instance, this this gear here is just on a bushing, and that will just slide off, and all of a sudden you can start to try and take bits and pieces apart. It's a bit stiff, that, so I'll need to pull it, but we might be able to do it. What I'm doing is probably trying to avoid having to take the main shaft out, because if we have to do that, we've got to go and take the primary drive to pieces. And take the primary drive to pieces, we've got to take all the exhaust, etc. off. So I'm just going to try a shortcut first. If we can't do it, we can't do it. But there's no harm in having a go, as long as obviously we don't damage any components and don't force things. If we have to try and force anything, then that's it. We'll strip the lot properly. So let's see how far we can get with dismantling the lay shaft. Right, I was doing a bit of fiddling around and observations in there, and the good news is it does look as though that the lay shaft third and second gears are meshing on this gearbox. So I can't remember now. Maybe I had a second gear made up too. But anyway, that might not be the issue. But what I've done is, first of all, I raised the cam plate fulcrum nut a little, just to loosen off, or just to raise it a little bit to see if that helped. And it was to a certain extent, but it still would not go into third gear. So what I've done now is I've raised this as far as it can go on its nut, but that's actually exposed, as you can see, the selector fork nibs and release them from the cam plate. What I can do now is I can pull out the spindle for the selector forks, and hopefully what that will do is, on the lay shaft side, will allow that first selector on that side to release, and I should be able to get that gear we can see off on the right hand side there, which will give me a bit more wiggle room. So let's see what we can do. Success! Got it out, no problem at all. Once I'd got the selector pivot spindle out and the selectors were released, there was enough room there to release the selectors from the gears, the grooves in the gears, and I was then able to gently wiggle out the lay shaft with most of the cluster on it. So this gear goes at this end and spins on this spindle here. Now we can remove that one, and then we can get to the two that we were worried about, which is, there's the third gear and there's the second gear. Now the second gear is held on there by a thrust washer here against the shoulder, and this lower gear is pressed on, so we can press that out, off to release this off the other end, but I don't think we need to do that because there's some problems here. So this third gear looks okay, but if you look at some areas of the teeth, there's some debris in there, and I think that has come off. The dogs in here in this second gear, you can't see it too well, but I will strip it. But those dogs have worn, even though it's not going into gear properly. And when you slide the third gear onto the shaft, I'll try and do this one-handed. There we go. Just about, I think. There we go. And you engage the dogs. Yeah, that's as far as it goes. That's not right. There's something wrong there. Now, I think I've got an initial plan. So this second gear and this third gear, I think, were made up. I think this second gear probably was specially made up, rather than the third, by me, so that its recesses mated with the dogs on this third gear. This is an original second gear, with its 7 dog slots. This third gear has only got 6 dog slots, and I've got a few of these, and this one obviously isn't right, and it's probably doesn't look as though it's been hardened either, because otherwise it wouldn't I don't think destroy the dogs on it like it has, sorry, the slots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig out some drawings that I have, because I do have a drawing for the proper third gear. I'm pretty sure that's the correct second gear. So the solution is to use one of these, of which I've got several, and check the drawing to make sure the drawing for the third gear is 7 dogs. And I'll probably get another one of these made up with 7 dogs and use that in this position. And then once we've done that, we'll check the thickness of the thrust washer that's behind there. You can see it against my finger, because maybe the thickness of that is too much. I'm not sure if I have a drawing of it, but we'll check that as well. So let's go back to the drawing for second and third gear lay shaft and check those out. Well, there it is. Obviously a photocopy of the original drawing, but complete nevertheless, of the lay shaft third gear, and part number's correct, 574232, and it clearly shows that it should have 7 dogs. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 7 dogs, not 6. So what we'll do then is get in touch with the relatively local precision engineers tomorrow and liaise with them and share this drawing with them. We'll probably have to reprint this and change the brightness, the contrast a little bit, but it's pretty clear, quite complex really, but not impossible, not at all. And as I say, they've made gears from patterns before, but I'm sure they'll be more than capable of doing it from drawings, setting up code and CNC and stuff like that. So this little saga and reparation is going to run for a little while, so we'll probably leave it there as the first part, and then I'll provide an update once we get an idea of when we'll receive a manufactured gear, but that might take a little while depending on how much work they've got. So I say we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. Thanks for your interest and subscriptions, comments, likes, etc. And no doubt I'll see you all again soon on another instalment of the Fury, where we might focus on the other area that we've got to look into, which is the oil leak from the cam chain tunnel. Or alternatively, we could just finish off the final oil pressure test on the A70, or indeed start on the top end of the A75V. So always plenty to do. That's it. Thanks very much, everybody. See you again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.